Wolverhampton Wanderers v Manchester United, August 1971. In this video, we hear the stories from this tense encounter from the early 70s. Football hooliganism was in its infancy, but a visit from Manchester's Red Army would excite any up-and-coming football hooligan, and Wolves were waiting in anticipation for the biggest match of their season. Here's what happened. Wolves fan Colin told us. Man United at home 1971 was mad. Wolves' end in those days was the North Bank, a small stand holding about 5,000 in total, but opposite to that was the massive South Bank, which held 30,000. It wasn't until 75-ish that Wolves started going into the South Bank for their fighting opposition fans, so in the early 70s it was all about defending the North Bank. A few firms tried to take it, West Ham once and Chelsea a couple of times, but all failed. Chelsea did eventually enter en masse during a game, but that was late 70s, and by then the Wolves hooligans had moved to the South Bank, as I say. Chelsea caused mayhem and crush injuries among the old and the kids, so most Wolves have hated them ever since. Anyway, I digress. I was part of a gang known as the Temple Street Mafia, and we basically ruled Wolverhampton town centre until the George Hotel boys took over in the mid-70s. We knew Man U would try to take the North Bank, so we were out early trying to pick off stragglers. Most were dealt with in a good old-fashioned kicking and sent on their way, but there was serious disorder in the town centre around 2 p.m. when the Man U specials arrived. There were bloody thousands of them, a real invasion, the likes of which hadn't been seen in Wolverhampton since the Glasgow Rangers European Cup game in 1961. We met them by the George Hotel, just by the ring road, and a serious battle commenced. One side would get the upper hand, but then the other side would advance, and fists and feet would flail everywhere. The police couldn't control the seething mass of fighting hordes. Some United ran, but most stayed in a tight unit and gradually fought their way to the ground. Once outside the South Bank, they suddenly began running towards the North Bank, our home end, with the obvious intention of trying to gain access. This was probably around 2:20 p.m., so the North Bank would be full by then. Luckily for us, a large group of Bilstonians had this very tactic of Man U's in mind and had parked themselves outside the North Bank, where they repelled United's attack and forced them back up Molyneux Street, where they were invited by West Mids police to enter their rightful section in the South Bank. We, in the meantime, entered our home end, the North Bank. I can't remember much about the game other than it was amazing seeing that many United in the South Bank. There must have been 10,000 of them, which was really unusual for the time, and it was obviously the start of their famous Red Army invasion tactics. Man United was always the first match you looked for in the fixture list, and for Wolves fans, West Brom and Leeds were the only other matches I looked for. I remember a couple of pitch invasions, one where a few Man United fans jumped out of the North Bank and waved their scarves at us jeering Wolves. Then they ran towards the cheering Red Army, only to stop, throw their Man United scarves on the ground, stamp on them, and bring out their Wolves scarves and hold them aloft, to much cheering from us and jeering from the United lot. That was funny. After the match, there was serious disorder in the town centre, especially in Dudley Street, the main shopping street at the time. Windows were put through and the police struggled to contain the fighting. From what I can remember, their numbers were huge, so I wouldn't say we got the upper hand, but neither would I say we came off second best. A score draw would probably describe the day's events, the same as the match, which finished 1-1. Little did I know at the time, but this match with its 48,000 plus people would pale into insignificance against the last match of that season, Leeds at Molyneux, who had to draw or win to win the title, but lost 2-1 with 54,000 plus people in attendance. Another story for another day, perhaps. Man United Red Army fan Tony told us, I was 17 in 1971, and this was my first away match of the new season. I'd been to a couple of away matches with the Reds the season before, but this was the first time with all my mates from Manchester. We hitchhiked along the M6 motorway before meeting up outside a Wolverhampton town centre church. We knew Wolves had a firm, but we didn't know much about them. You have to remember, football hooliganism was still a rarity. I've mentioned this many times, but the Red Army invaded towns and cities at its own discretion. So, for example, we didn't go to Leeds or Newcastle in the early 70s, but we would turn up en masse to places like Wolves, Villa, Sheffield, etc. Sort of Tier 2 hooligans, I would suggest. Not up there with the likes of the Scousers or the Cockneys, but could still cause you lots of trouble in the right circumstances. But for Wolves, we knew we had booked 5 football specials, which is a lot, and they would be arriving around 1:30, 2 p.m. So anyway, we are sunning ourselves on the grass of this churchyard after travelling all night, then trying to get some kip in a field somewhere outside Wolves, when all of a sudden this firm of wolves turns up and starts shouting and bawling at us. Well, we didn't take kindly to being woken up from our slumber, so we chased them off, only to realise we had been set a trap, and a much bigger wolves firm was waiting for us in the street around the corner. They filled the road, about 50 in total, but I wasn't in the mood for counting, so I charged at them. The rest of our group of about 20 followed me. It shocked them, and after a few punches and kicks, they ran. I was buzzing, and so were the lads. Our first ruck, and we had won. Now we were fully awake, so wandered the streets until the pubs opened. Started off just United in there, but Wolves came in 1s and 2s. At about 1:30 p.m, it's half United and half Wolves. Not hooligans, but normal fans. But of course, it only takes one song or comment to rile up the other fans, and it ended in a brawl, with Wolves getting chased out of the pub and into the streets, where it carried on for a short spell until the police moved in and moved the Wolves lot away. But Wolves were baying for blood, with the streets around the centre a no-go for United. We wandered around searching for another boozer, but then in the distance we heard United, clap, clap, clap. United, clap, clap, clap. It was thunderous and meant only one thing. The specials had arrived, and what a sight it was. Thousands of United marching down the streets of Wolverhampton town centre, singing and clapping. We ran over and joined them. But obviously, the baying Wolves hordes didn't much like this invasion of their town, and started to mob up against us, forming a barrier at one junction, filling the road with their group. Wanderers they sing and surged into us. A mass battle took place at that junction, just outside their George Hotel, where their boys drank. I must admit, I was quite impressed with the Wolves mob. I mean, they were outnumbered, but had a good old toe-to-toe with us. The fighting lasted a good 5 minutes, which is a long time in hooligan terms, isn't it? But our superior numbers told at the end of the day, and we forced our way through and onwards to the ground, with a few coppers leading the way. More United joined our swelling ranks from the coach park on their ring road, and by now, it just seemed like miles of United as far as the eye could see, with Wolves on the other side of the road, following like flies. Then it was time for the infamous Wolves subway. As we entered, we all knew there would be trouble, and there was. Wolves came flying through the opposite end, towards us, and for what seemed like hours, it was going off toe-to-toe in that subway. I can still hear the noise that reverberated around the inner walls of that subway. But the sheer weight of numbers beat them back, and after some time, Wolves backed off and carried on down the street towards their own end, realizing the game was up. Simply too many United. Wolves were no mugs and had given it their best shot, but by now we were buoyant, filling the whole area. Everyone was wearing red and white and singing, "United, United." Once inside the ground, the South Bank was ours. This is before the Wolves nutters went in the South Bank. They were in the opposite end, the North Bank, which was puny compared to our end, must have held 30,000, and it looked like most of Manchester was there to me. It must have been some sight to the Wolves packed in their tiny end. There was a couple of pitch invasions, but I can't remember much of the match. After the game, there were more shenanigans in the town centre, with a rejuvenated Wolves mob trying it on, but getting chased all around Wolves town centre. The town was ours, and we made sure they knew by putting in shop windows before setting off to the trains, even though we hadn't got tickets. The police never asked for them once at the station. Simply too many United, and they wanted to get rid of us. so we got a free ride back home to Manchester. And that's my recollection of my journey to Wolves in August 1971. Great times, and I have many more stories of my escapades. We thank Colin and Tony for their recollections. It's clear that Wolves had a decent go at United, but simply too many numbers forced them back time and time again. Man United was like an invasion in the 70s, and for most people, the first match that was looked for on the fixture list. Don't forget to share, like and subscribe, as it really helps our channel grow. Comment if you have memories of this match. We'd love to hear from you. Do the recollections match your memories?